Arizona Territory, 1871. At 30 years old, Eliza Ward's palms were roughened by years of battling stubborn soil and merciless sun. She dragged the back of her sleeve across her brow, eyes narrowed against the heat. Her pale hair was pulled tight into a no-nonsense knot as she watched her 5-year-old daughter, June Ward, crouched beneath the porch roof, carefully arranging corn-husk dolls she had made herself. "Ma, do you think the rain's coming today?" June asked, tilting her face upward. Her blue eyes, too wise for her age, were the same eyes her father had left behind when he disappeared the moment he learned Eliza carried a child. "Not today, little bird," Eliza answered, scanning the empty sky. 3 months without rain had burned their crops thin and left the future hanging by a thread. "But we'll make it," she added quietly. "We always do." Their closest neighbors lived 10 hard miles away in Willow Creek, a settlement hardly worthy of the name. Just a few warped buildings, a general store, and a saloon where broken men drank to forget the promises the West had chewed up and spat out. Eliza had abandoned Boston after June's father walked away, chasing a clean start where no one knew her history. Her own father's small inheritance had bought this land, nothing more. Pride kept her here, kept her from turning back east with her head bowed. As evening settled in, movement flickered along the horizon. A lone rider black against the dying sun. June inside. Now, Eliza said sharply, her hand already closing around the Winchester by the door. Out here, strangers rarely brought good intentions. The horseman advanced at an unhurried pace. As he drew closer, Eliza stiffened. He was native tall, broad-shouldered, with long dark hair and eyes that swallowed light instead of reflecting it. The way he sat his horse and the patterns stitched into his clothing marked him clearly. Apache. He halted well short of the cabin and simply watched. His gaze swept over the sagging crops, the weather-worn boards, the woman aiming a rifle at his chest. "This is private land," Eliza called out, forcing steel into her voice. "Say what you want, or turn around." The man raised both hands, slowly empty. Then without haste he reached back and produced a dead rabbit, holding it where she could see. "I don't need charity," Eliza said, though hunger twisted her gut. They'd survived weeks on beans and cornmeal. The Apache dismounted with easy grace. He stepped forward, set the rabbit on the ground, and retreated with a short nod. "Why?" Eliza demanded. He studied her expression carved from stone. "The child is thin," he said in clear English, his voice rough, unused. Before she could answer, he mounted and rode off, dissolving into the falling dark. That night, while June slept, Eliza sat, watched by the window rifle, across her knees. The rabbit lay cleaned on the table. Pride had lost to survival. "Ma, who was that man?" June asked the next morning, sipping broth with quiet delight. "Just someone passing through," Eliza replied, though her eyes kept drifting toward the hills. "He looked like the mountain," June said. Eliza frowned. "What do you mean, strong?" "Quiet. Like the mountains," June said simply. "The mountain man." Eliza said nothing, though a chill crept along her spine. There had been something in the man's eyes, not danger exactly, but restrained force like a storm waiting. 3 days later he returned, this time with cornmeal and another rabbit. Again, he placed the goods on the ground and stepped back. "I told you, we don't need charity." Eliza called her protest thinner now. "Not charity," he answered. "Trade." "What do you want?" He gestured toward the creek near her land. "Water. Sometimes. For me and my horse." It was a small request. Eliza nodded. "You got a name?" For a moment she thought he'd stay silent. Then he said it. "Sahko. I'm Eliza Ward. That's my daughter, June." June waved from the window despite instructions. Sahko's stern face softened, just a fraction. He lifted a hand in acknowledgement, then rode away. That night, Eliza lay awake, measuring the man against the horror stories printed back east. She found no savagery in him, only restraint, dignity, strength that reminded her of the man who raised her. In the weeks that followed, Sahko came and went, quietly, sometimes with herbs, sometimes game, once turquoise for June. He spoke little, but his presence became familiar. Eliza learned he lived alone in the mountains, cut loose from his people for reasons he never shared. And slowly, against her will, she realized something unsettling. She felt safer when he was near. She began to notice the scars etched across his body, some rough and jagged, from combat, others too precise, too cruel to be accidental. One afternoon, while he helped her brace a fallen fence post, she caught sight of him without his shirt. The network of old wounds carved into his skin stole the breath from her lungs. One evening, as they sat on the porch with June Ward already asleep inside, he spoke quietly. "So, your husband," Sahko said, eyes fixed on the darkening land, "is he dead?" The question struck her harder than she expected. It was the first time he had asked about her life beyond the present. No, Eliza Ward admitted, shame tightening her throat. "He left when he found out I was pregnant. Went back east, I suppose." Sahko gave a slow nod, his face unreadable in the fading light. "Many men are weak." She surprised herself by pressing on. "And you? Did you have a wife? Children?" A shadow crossed his expression. "I had a wife. A son." His voice was flat, stripped of emotion, but the pain beneath it was unmistakable. "What happened to them?" Eliza asked softly. "Soldiers," he said, turning his gaze toward the horizon. "Many soldiers. I was hunting. When I came back, there was only ash and blood." Her hand lifted on instinct, covering his. "I'm sorry." His body tensed at the contact, but he didn't pull away. They sat in silence as stars spilled across the sky, two broken souls beneath a desert that offered no mercy. Later, lying awake, Eliza felt fear coil in her chest. She was beginning to care for him. It was reckless. Even if he weren't Apache, she had sworn never to give her heart to another man after June's father. And yet when Sahko was near, she felt something she thought was gone forever: safety. The danger, she realized, wasn't him. It was what stirred inside her whenever he stood too close. Summer bled into fall, and with it came the first murmurs of trouble from Willow Creek. Eliza heard them. During her monthly supply run, June Ward clinging tightly to her hand as they crossed the dusty street. "That Ward woman," someone hissed as they passed the saloon. "Heard she's got herself an Indian friend." "Apache devil," another spat. "Someone ought to deal with that." Eliza quickened her pace. At the general store, Curtis Hale watched her coldly as he filled her order, setting each item down with deliberate slowness. "People are talking, Mrs. Ward," he said at last, "about your visitor." "My business is my own, Mr. Hale," Eliza replied stiffly. "Not when it's Apache," he snapped. "Not after what happened to the Miller family last spring." He leaned closer. 3 dead. Scalped. Baby smashed on a rock. Sahko would never. "So you're on a first-name basis with him now," Hale sneered. "You think you know those animal savages? For your daughter's sake, send him away before something bad happens." Eliza gathered her goods and left without another word, her face burning with fury and fear. She knew the stories. Everyone did. But she also knew Sahko, his gentleness with June, the care he showed the land, the respect he carried into her home. That night she waited by the creek where he often watered his horse. When he appeared, she told him everything. "You should leave," she said, hating herself for the words. "It's not safe for you here anymore." Sahko studied her carefully. "And you? The child? Are you safe if I go?" The question unsettled her. "What do you mean? Men in town talk," he said. "They say a woman alone has no right to land. They wait like coyotes for weakness." Cold truth slid down her spine. Men had come before offers of marriage, wrapped in threats. When she refused, their smiles turned sharp. "We'll manage," she said, but even she heard the doubt. Sahko stepped closer, close enough that she felt his warmth against the night air. "I will not bring danger to your door," he said quietly, "but I will not leave you unprotected." Her pulse quickened. For the first time she acknowledged the tension between them, something far deeper than fear. "I don't need protection," she whispered, though she didn't move away. "Everyone needs protection." "Eliza Ward," he said, speaking her name with a reverence that made her shiver. "Even the mountains need the sky." Before she could answer, he vanished into the darkness. 3 nights later, the attack came. Eliza woke to pounding hooves, many of them. She grabbed her rifle and shook June Ward awake. "Hide in the root cellar," she whispered. "Don't come out until I call, no matter what you hear." June nodded, clutching her doll as Eliza rushed her through the trapdoor beneath the kitchen floor. Rifle in hand, Eliza took position by the window. 5 riders emerged from the night, faces hidden by bandanas. One carried a torch. "Come out, Mrs. Ward," a familiar voice called. Her stomach dropped. Bram Holloway. He was one of the men who had once offered to solve her troubles if she would only be sensible and marry him. "This land is private," Eliza Ward shouted into the night. "Turn around now or I start firing." Her warning was met with laughter. "A woman's got no claim to land she can't handle," Bram Holloway called back. "We're just here to teach you some sense." One of the men swung down from his horse and headed toward the small barn where her mule and chickens were kept, torch raised high. His meaning was unmistakable. Eliza steadied her breath, aimed and pulled the trigger. The shot missed, but the man yelped, dropping the torch as he scrambled backward. "That was a mistake, Mrs. Ward," Bram snarled. "Boys show her what happens to women who forget their place." The riders fanned out, encircling the cabin. Eliza's pulse thundered as she counted what little she had left. 5 bullets, no time to reload. Too many angles to cover. The first man reached the porch and took a round in the shoulder, screaming as he fell. The second lunged for the door before she put a bullet through his leg. 3 shots gone. 3 men still standing. Then the darkness moved. Like something born of shadow, Sahko surged from the night. He struck without hesitation, ripping one man from his saddle and snapping his arm with a brutal crack. Another collapsed unconscious before he hit the ground. Bram wheeled his horse to flee, but Sahko seized the reins, wrenching the animal to a halt and dragging him down. They slammed into the dirt, Bram's heavier weight no match for Sahko's precision and fury. Eliza stood frozen as Sahko pinned him, a blade flashing into his hand pressed tight against Bram's throat. "No!" she screamed, rushing forward. "Sahko, don't!" He looked up, eyes burning with a rage she had never seen. For a heartbeat she feared he was lost to it. "Not for him," she said softly, stepping closer. "For you. For us. Please." The fire drained from his gaze. He withdrew the knife, but kept Bram trapped beneath him. "You tell them," Sahko growled. "This woman and this child are under my protection. Any man who comes here with harm in his heart will not leave alive." He shoved Bram away. Gasping and cursing, the man fled. The others followed, hauling their wounded with them into the night. Silence returned. Eliza and Sahko stood facing one another in the moonlight, breath ragged. "You came back," she said. "I never left," he answered. "I've watched over you since the first day." The words should have frightened her. Instead, they shattered something open inside her, relief, gratitude, and something far deeper. She stepped forward. For the first time, she touched him without hesitation, her palms resting against his chest. His heart pounded beneath her fingers, wild and powerful. "You're bleeding," she whispered, spotting the cut along his cheek. "It's nothing." "Come inside," she said. "Let me take care of it." She needed the motion, the task, anything, to keep from drowning in what she felt. After bringing June Ward up from the cellar and settling her back to sleep, Eliza cleaned Sahko's wound by lamplight. He watched her in silence, eyes dark as the desert night. "Why do you stay?" she asked quietly. "After everything my people have done to yours, why protect us?" He didn't answer at once. Then he covered her hand with his. "Because when you look at me, I am not a savage," he said. "And when your child smiles, I see my son." His voice tightened. "When everything else is taken, a man must find something worth living for, or he dies inside." The truth of it stripped her bare. Eliza leaned in, resting her forehead against his, breathing him in sage dust iron. "Stay," she whispered, "not as a shield. Stay because we need you. Because I—" Her voice failed. Sahko cupped her face, his touch impossibly gentle for a man who had fought like a storm moments before. "I will stay," he said, "until you tell me to go." In the quiet cabin with June's soft breathing in the next room, Eliza made her choice. She turned her face just enough for their lips to meet. The kiss began uncertain, a question more than a claim, until Sahko answered, pulling her close with a sound torn from deep within him. They came together. Like dry land, meeting rain, knowing salvation and ruin, often share the same path. Later, tangled in the hush of night, Eliza whispered, "They'll come back. With more men." Sahko's arms tightened around her. "Then we will be ready." By morning, the story had spread through Willow Creek, whispered in doorways and spat in the street. A white woman living with an Apache, sleeping with the enemy. When Eliza and June Ward rode into town with Sahko beside them, the murmurs hardened into open hatred. He stood tall beneath it all, unflinching under their stares. "Mama, why are they staring at us like that?" June Ward asked, clutching Eliza Ward's skirt as they stepped out of the general store. Inside, Curtis Hale had refused them service without shame. Eliza swallowed hard, forcing her voice steady. "People fear what they don't understand, little bird." Her heart ached at the confusion, clouding her daughter's eyes. "Do they hate the mountain man?" Eliza glanced toward Sahko, who was securing their few supplies in the wagon. In the 2 months since he had begun living openly at the homestead, June had grown deeply attached to him. He taught her how to read tracks in the dirt, which plants could be eaten, how to step through brush without leaving a sound. In return, she filled his long silences with endless questions and stories, coaxing rare smiles from him when he least expected it. "Some folks judge by how someone looks," Eliza said carefully, "not by what they do." June thought about that, her brow furrowed. "That's stupid," she decided. Despite the tension, Eliza laughed, and even Sahko's mouth lifted in the faintest hint of a smile. The ride home passed in silence, each of them lost in their own thoughts. Eliza knew the truth: they were living on borrowed time. The hatred in town would not stay quiet forever. But for now, they still had this. The small cabin. The land slowly responding to their shared labor. The family they had never planned, but fiercely claimed. At the homestead, life pressed on. Eliza and Sahko worked side by side, preparing for winter, patching the cabin walls, smoking meat, preserving what little the land had given them. At night they lay together, finding a wordless harmony their worlds had never allowed. One evening by the fire, with June already asleep, Eliza broke the quiet. "Tell me about your people." Sahko remained silent long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. Then softly he spoke of the Apache way of honoring the land of spirits that lived within all things of endurance and freedom. "My father was a chief," he said, surprising her. "He taught me that a warrior's strength is not in his arm, but in his heart." "And have you?" Eliza asked gently. Endured firelight reflected in his eyes, revealing pain deeper than she could name. "I lived. I breathed," he said, "until I met you and the child. That was all I did." He reached for her hand, his calloused fingers lacing with hers. "Now I remember hope." 2 weeks later, everything cracked. Lucas Brand rode up to the homestead, his face drawn beneath a dust-caked hat. "Mrs. Ward," he said deliberately, ignoring Sahko standing beside her. "I came to warn you." Eliza stiffened. There's a territory cavalry unit moving through. Brand continued. They're hunting an Apache who left the reservation. Words reached them about what's going on here. Eliza felt the blood drain from her face. Sahko has done nothing wrong. He lives peacefully. Brand removed his hat with a sigh. That won't matter. An Apache off the reservation is considered hostile. And a white woman living with him? He shook his head. They'll take him. And they may take your daughter too, June. Send her east, Brand added quietly, to one of those Indian schools. Civilize her. They would not dare, Sahko said, his voice calm and dangerous. They would, Brand replied, and the law would back them. He settled his hat again. You've got maybe 2 days. I'd think hard on your choices. After he left, silence pressed in around them like a burial cloth. We could run, Eliza said at last. Go south, into Mexico. Sahko shook his head. The desert would kill the child. I won't let them take you, Eliza said fiercely, and I won't let them take June. I'd die first. He pulled her close, grounding her shaking breath. We will find a way, he said, as we always have. That night, while Sahko slept beside her, Eliza lay awake as a desperate plan took shape. Foolish perhaps, but the only chance left. At dawn, she sent Sahko hunting despite his reluctance. Once he was gone, she hitched the mule and drove into town with June straight to the small church on the edge of settlement. Father Amos Cole looked up in surprise as they entered. June's hand was tight in Eliza's. Mrs. Ward, this is unexpected. I need your help, Eliza said without hesitation. You're the only one who might listen. The old minister set aside his Bible and motioned her to sit. For the next hour, Eliza told him everything, the life she had built, with Sahko, the love that had grown between them, the family they had become. She spoke of Sahko's kindness with June, his respect for the land, the nightmares that still woke him, calling out for a wife and child lost to soldiers. I'm not asking for your approval, Eliza finished. I'm asking for your help. The cavalry is coming, Eliza Ward said, her voice tight. They'll take him or kill him for nothing more than breathing. And they may take June as well. Father Amos Cole said nothing at first. His weathered face tightened as the weight of her words settled in. What you're describing, he said at last, a union between a white woman and an Indian. Many would say it violates the natural order. Some would call it an abomination. Eliza leaned forward, desperation sharpening her courage. Is love an abomination, Reverend? Is mercy? Is sacrifice? Her eyes burned. If your God is love, as you preach every Sunday, how can he condemn what we've built? The minister exhaled slowly. What is it you want from me? Marry us, Eliza said plainly. Make us lawful in the eyes of the territory. Father Amos stiffened. You can't be serious. They can't tear a legal husband away from his wife and child, she pressed, not without a fight. A marriage performed by an ordained minister buys us time to challenge them, time to survive. He shook his head, yet doubt flickered in his eyes. He had always preached restraint and compassion, even when it cost him standing in town. Please, Eliza whispered. If not for me, then for June. For a long moment the church was silent. Then Father Amos nodded slow and heavy. Bring him at sundown. I'll do it. He hesitated. But this won't end the danger. There are still men who will wish you harm. I know, Eliza said. But it gives us a chance. When Sahko returned from hunting, she told him everything. He listened without interruption, his face unreadable. You would bind yourself to me in the white man's way, he said at last. Knowing the cost, Eliza took his hands. I bound myself to you the moment I let you into my heart. This only tells the world what already is. Something shifted in him, softened, yielded. In my people's way, he said quietly, a man and woman walk into the wilderness together for 4 days. When they return, they are joined. His voice grew rough. I cannot give you 4 days of peace, but I give you all that I am for however long we have." That evening, beneath flickering candles in the small church, Eliza and Sahko stood before Father Amos Cole. June Ward watched solemnly from the pew, sensing the gravity of the moment. The ceremony was brief, the words adjusted, careful but resolute. When the minister declared them husband and wife, Eliza felt triumph braided with dread. They had won something fragile. Not safety, but time. Outside, the setting sun washed the desert in crimson and gold. The beauty of it caught in her throat. This ruthless land that had somehow given her everything she never dared to ask for. "What now?" she asked as they climbed into the wagon. Sahko looked toward the horizon. "Now we prepare." They barely had a night. At dawn, Eliza saw dust rising fast. Too many riders to be anything but the Territory Cavalry. "Take June to the root cellar," Sahko said, calm, despite the danger. "Stay until it's over." Eliza gripped his arm. "No, we face this together, as husband and wife." For a heartbeat he hesitated. Then he nodded, pride burning in his eyes. Together they stood on the porch, June between them, as 20 blue-coated riders closed in. At their head rode a captain, his face twisted with open contempt. "This is the Ward place," he called, reining in. "I'm Captain Reed Lawson. I'm here about the Apache you're harboring." Eliza lifted her chin. "This is my husband, Captain, married yesterday in the church at Willow Creek." A murmur rippled through the soldiers. Lawson's expression darkened. "That's impossible," he snapped. "Such a union has no standing." "It does," Eliza replied, forcing steadiness. "There is no statute in Arizona Territory forbidding marriage between whites and Indians. The ceremony was gainful and binding. Father Amos Cole will confirm it." "This is nonsense," Lawson barked. "The man is an Apache who left the reservation without leave. He comes with us." Sahko stepped forward, his hand resting lightly on June's shoulder. "I will not leave my family." The captain's hand dropped toward his pistol. Eliza Ward felt her heart pound so hard it nearly drowned out the world. This was the moment she had always feared, the moment when reason failed and only force remained. She stepped closer to Sahko, her shoulder brushing his in quiet resolve. "If you take him," she said clearly, "you take all of us." Her voice did not waver. "And I imagine newspapers back east would be very interested in a story about the U.S. Cavalry tearing apart a legally married family and their child." Captain Reed Lawson's eyes narrowed. "Are you threatening me, woman?" "I'm stating facts," Captain Eliza replied. "You may despise our marriage, but it exists. You may hate that we found happiness, but we did. And if you destroy it out of prejudice, I will make sure the entire country hears about it." For a long, tense moment it seemed Lawson might give the order anyway. Then unexpectedly, one of the soldiers spoke. "Sir, perhaps we should consult the territorial governor before acting. If there are legal questions." Lawson shot him a venomous look, but Eliza saw the doubt flicker behind his anger. He was a soldier, not a politician. The risk of scandal unsettled him. "This isn't finished," he snapped at last, wheeling his horse. "We'll return with proper authorization." As the Territory Cavalry rode off, in a cloud of dust, Eliza's legs nearly buckled. Sahko's arm slid around her waist, steady and strong. "You fought like a warrior," he said quietly. "I fought like a woman, protecting what she loves," Eliza corrected. "And we've only gained time, not victory." That night, while June Ward slept peacefully, for the first time in days, Eliza and Sahko sat by the fire planning. "We should leave," Sahko said. "Tonight. They may return with more men." Eliza nodded slowly. "Where would we go north? Into the mountains. There are places no one would ever find us. We could build a new life far from hatred." The idea tempted her freedom, however harsh, away from judgment and cruelty. But something fierce rose in her chest. "No," she said firmly, This is our home. We worked this land, bled for it. I won't be chased off like a thief in the night. Sahko studied her face in the firelight. It may come to blood, Eliza. I would not wish that for you or the child. Sometimes blood is the price of freedom, she replied, startling herself with her own strength. You taught me that. You taught me to stand my ground. A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his solemn features. My wife has the heart of an Apache warrior. Eliza leaned into him. And my husband taught me what it means to be free. They spent the night preparing, securing the cabin, gathering supplies, readying themselves for dawn. But when the sun rose, it wasn't the cavalry that appeared. A lone rider came hard across the land, Lucas Brand, his horse foaming with sweat. They're coming, he called as he dismounted. Not just the cavalry. Half the town's riding with them. Armed. Drunk. Word of your marriage stirred a hornet's nest. Eliza felt cold spread through her veins. How many? 40? Maybe 50. Too many. Brand shifted uneasily. I came to warn you. I can't stop them, but you deserve a chance to run. Eliza and Sahko exchanged a look. They had already chosen. Thank you, Sheriff, Eliza said quietly. But we're staying. Brand stared at them in disbelief. That's suicide. They'll kill him. And God knows what they'll do to you and the girl. This is our home, Eliza answered. We'll defend it. The sheriff studied them for a long moment, then sighed. I'll try to keep things from turning ugly. But once they arrive, he shook his head. May God be with you. After he rode off, Eliza turned to Sahko. Are you certain? He cupped her face, his eyes filled with a love that still stole her breath. I have run from death all my life, he said softly. I will not run from life with you. They sent June Ward to hide in the small cave Sahko had shown her, a quiet sanctuary half a mile from the cabin. She went bravely, clutching her doll and the medicine pouch he had made, promising to stay hidden until they came. As the thunder of approaching hooves grew louder, Eliza and Sahko stood together on the porch, hands clasped. On the horizon, the Willow Creek mob rose like a living dust storm, horses and men churning forward as one. And they waited. At the front rode Captain Reed Lawson, his uniform spotless, his jaw set with rigid conviction. Beside him, Bram Holloway led the Willow Creek mob, a burning torch clenched in his fist, vengeance blazing in his eyes. This is your final warning, Mrs. Ward Lawson called as they closed in. Step aside and let us take the Apache, or suffer the consequences. Eliza Ward's reply was swift. She lifted the Winchester to her shoulder, the barrel steady, aimed squarely at the captain's chest. At her side, Sahko stood, unflinching, his presence solid as stone, a shield against the fear clawing at her ribs. This is our home, Eliza called back. Recognized by law and before God, any man who steps onto this land with violence in his heart will answer to both. A ripple of unease moved through the crowd, especially among those townsmen who knew Eliza as a devout, hard-working woman. Doubt crept into their faces. Bram Holloway shoved forward, his voice thick with bile. She's been corrupted by the savage. No sane white woman would choose an Apache over her own. I choose love over hatred, Eliza answered, her voice carrying across the morning air. I choose family over prejudice. And you, what do you choose, to be remembered as men who upheld the law? Or as a lynch mob? For a moment it seemed her words might reach them. Several men shifted, exchanging uneasy glances, their resolve faltering. Then Captain Reed Lawson raised his hand. Take him, he ordered, and anyone who stands in your way. The soldiers stepped forward, weapons drawn. Behind them, the mob followed, faces twisted by fear and ignorance. Eliza felt Sahko tense beside her, readying for a fight they could not win. She tightened her grip on the Winchester, knowing they would take some of them down even if it cost everything. Then the ground began to shake. A low rumble rolled beneath their feet, swelling into a thunderous roar. Horses screamed and reared, eyes wild, fighting their reins. "What in God's name?" Lawson shouted, struggling to control his mount. And then they came, pouring over the western ridge like a living tide, the spirit buffalo. Hundreds, maybe thousands. Their massive bodies moved as one, unstoppable, relentless, like an avalanche given flesh. Panic tore through the mob. Horses bolted, throwing riders. Men scattered, scrambling for trees and rocks. Every thought of vengeance obliterated by the raw power of the earth itself. Sahko seized Eliza's hand. Inside, he shouted over the thunder of hooves. They retreated into the cabin, watching through the window as the buffalo surged around their homestead, splitting around it like water, around stone, engulfing the attackers while leaving the cabin untouched. Dust filled the air, thick with the primal scent of the great beasts. Eliza clutched Sahko's arm, her heart racing with terror and awe. "How is this possible?" she whispered. "Buffalo haven't been seen here in years." Sahko's face glowed with fierce reverence. "The land remembers those who honor it," he said. "All living things are bound together, ways your people have forgotten." Through the swirling dust, they glimpsed their would-be attackers, some clinging to trees, others flattened against stone, utterly helpless as the herd thundered past. Not attacking, merely passing through, as if following an ancient path known only to the earth. For nearly an hour the buffalo flowed through the valley. When the last of them vanished over the eastern ridge, silence fell deep and unnatural. Eliza and Sahko stepped cautiously onto the porch. The land was torn and scattered, abandoned weapons and gear strewn everywhere. Yet their cabin and garden stood untouched, an island of calm amid chaos. No attackers remained, only a few riderless horses wandering aimlessly. "We should get June," Eliza said, her voice trembling. They found June Ward, safe in her hiding place, eyes shining with excitement rather than fear. "Did you see them?" "Mama," she cried. "So many. They were beautiful." Eliza pulled her close, tears spilling freely. "Yes, little bird, they were." As they walked back toward the cabin, June between them, Sahko suddenly stopped. His head tilted, listening. "What is it?" Eliza asked. He looked toward the horizon, softening his features. "They are still there, watching, making sure we are safe." "Who?" Eliza asked. "The spirits of this land," he said gently. "My ancestors. Perhaps yours as well." He knelt beside June, resting a large, careful hand on her shoulder. "They have given us a gift, a chance to begin again." June nodded solemnly as though she understood. And perhaps she did, Eliza thought. Children often saw truths adults had forgotten. 3 months passed without any sign of Captain Reed Lawson or the men from town. The event soon called the Buffalo Miracle grew almost mythical in retelling. Some claimed it was chance. Others, especially among the native peoples, whispered it was a sign from the Great Spirit. For Eliza Ward, Sahko, and June, it was something simpler, a reprieve. Winter settled over the valley, cold, bright days and nights heavy with stars, while they strengthened the bonds that had saved them all. What had once been only a rough shelter had slowly become a true home, shaped by small, sacred routines of family life. June Ward's lessons by firelight. Meals shared at their plain wooden table. Evenings when Sahko spoke softly of his people, while Eliza Ward stitched worn clothing and June listened as if every word were a treasure. One night, wrapped together in a blanket on the porch, watching the moon climb above the distant hills, Eliza spoke quietly. "Will you teach me your language?" Sahko turned to her, startled. "You want to learn Apache? I want to understand your world," she said simply. "The way you've tried to understand mine." Something gentle crossed his face, an openness she rarely saw. "It would honor me," he said. "And I will teach June as well if she wishes." Those lessons wove themselves into the fabric of their days. Eliza struggled with unfamiliar sounds and rhythms, but June absorbed them eagerly. soon speaking in a joyful mix of English and Apache that drew laughter from Sahko. Laughter that once had been rare and now filled their home. Spring arrived early that year, spilling wildflowers across the desert in brilliant color. One morning, Eliza stood in the doorway watching Sahko teach June how to follow rabbit tracks through brush and stone. The girl moved with quiet grace, copying his steps, her face solemn with focus. A bittersweet joy settled in Eliza's chest. This life they had built was more precious than anything she had known, yet the shadow of the outside world never vanished completely. "They'll come back someday," she said one night as she lay beside Sahko in the dark. "Maybe not Captain Reed Lawson, maybe not the same men, but others like them." "Yes," Sahko said, tightening his arms around her. "Hatred does not fade quickly." He was silent for a moment. "We could go north as we once discussed, into the mountains, away from everyone." His heartbeat was steady beneath her cheek. "Is that what you want, Eliza?" he asked. "To live, always hidden, always afraid?" She lifted herself onto one elbow, studying his face in the moonlight, slipping through the window. "What I want is a life with you and June. Where that is here, the mountains or somewhere else entirely matters less than being together. And June," he asked. "She will grow. One day, she will want more than just us, more than this land." Eliza hadn't let herself think that far ahead, but she knew he was right. June deserved choices, a future wider than isolation. "What are you saying?" she asked. Sahko sat up thoughtful. "There are places where people from different worlds live together in peace. Few, but they exist. Settlements where old hatreds have begun to weaken." Hope stirred in Eliza's chest. "You know of one," he nodded. "When I wandered after losing my family, I heard stories. In New Mexico territory, there is a high valley where Mexicans, whites, and Indians live side by side. They call it Valle de Paz, Valley of Peace." "How far?" she asked. "Many days. Hard country." Eliza weighed the danger against the promise of a life without constant fear. "And you believe they would accept us?" "I believe we would have a chance," Sahko said quietly. "More than we have here." The decision came slowly. They talked for weeks, turning every concern over again and again. When they finally explained the idea to June, she was thrilled by the thought of adventure, but saddened by leaving the only home she had known. "Will there be children like me?" she asked. Not just white or Indian, but both Eliza and Sahko exchanged a glance. It was a question neither had considered. How June saw herself standing between worlds. "I don't know, little bird," Eliza said honestly. "But wherever we go, you will always be our daughter. That is what matters." As spring deepened into summer, they prepared, quietly setting aside supplies, planning their route, deciding what to carry and what to leave behind. The old wagon would take them part of the way. After that, they would ride. The night before they planned to leave, Eliza stood alone beside the stream, where she had first truly come to know Sahko. Moonlight shimmered across the water, reflecting the vast sky above. She heard him approach. He moved silently by instinct, yet always made some small sound, so she would not be startled. Having second thoughts, he asked gently. Eliza shook her head. "When you first came here to water your horse, I was terrified." She turned to face him, taking in the quiet strength that had become her anchor. "Now I'm only afraid of losing what we've found." Sahko cupped her face, his hands steady and tender. "What we have built cannot truly be lost," he said. "Not in the ways that matter. It lives in us." Eliza whispered, her voice barely more than breath. "In June, in the land itself. You've changed me in ways I never expected." Sahko's voice roughened with feeling. "And you gave me life again when I believed only vengeance and death remained. Whatever comes," she said softly, "that can never be taken from us." They stood together beside the moonlit stream, two souls who had crossed the boundaries of their worlds to create something fragile and rare. Whatever waited ahead, peace in some distant valley or more battles against hatred, they would meet it side by side. Morning broke clear and bright. They loaded the last of their possessions into the wagon and paused for one final look at the small cabin that had sheltered their unlikely family. "Will we ever come back?" June Ward asked, her small hand wrapped around Eliza's. "Maybe someday," Eliza answered, though she knew it was unlikely. "But home isn't only a place, little bird. It's the people you love." They were nearly ready to depart when dust rose along the horizon, riders approaching fast. Eliza's heart sank. Had Captain Reed Lawson or men like him returned after all? Inside, Sahko said sharply, reaching for the rifle secured in the wagon. But as the figures drew closer, Eliza saw with surprise that it was Lucas Brand, accompanied by Father Amos Cole and several men from town. Not the Willow Creek mob, but a small orderly group. "What do they want?" Eliza murmured. "We will soon learn," Sahko replied, standing firmly at her side. Sheriff Brand reined in his horse and raised a hand. "Mrs. Sahko," he said formally, using her married name for the first time. "We heard you were planning to leave." "News travels quickly," Eliza said carefully. "Small towns," Brand replied with a shrug. "Little stays hidden." He dismounted, hat in hand. "We came to ask you to reconsider." Eliza shot Sahko a startled glance. "Why would it matter to you if we go?" "Most folks in town would celebrate. Not all of us," Father Amos Cole said, stepping forward. "What happened here, the buffalo changed things, made people think." One of the men, Henry Cobb, a farmer, Eliza barely knew, cleared his throat. "I lost 2 brothers to Apache raids years ago," he said awkwardly. "Figured I'd carry that hate to my grave." He shifted his weight. "But seeing how you stood your ground, how you protected your home, and then that miracle," he shook his head, "made me realize there's more to this world than I ever allowed." Eliza was speechless. These were men who had once looked through her, or worse, judged her for loving Sahko. Now they stood before her, uncertain but sincere. "Captain Reed Lawson and his men won't be back," Sheriff Brand added. "Too many witnessed what happened for it to be twisted into something else." "A miracle," Father Amos said quietly. "And the territorial governor has taken notice. He's not eager to have his office tied to the persecuting legally married families, no matter their background." "What is it you're offering?" Sahko asked. His tone was calm, but his eyes were alert. The men exchanged glances. "Peace," Father Amos said. "A chance for you to stay on your land without fear, and for us to learn from what happened." "Not everyone agrees," Brand admitted. "But fewer now, and the law stands with you." Hope and caution warred inside Eliza. "We've already made our choice," she said firmly. "We plan to leave, to start fresh elsewhere." The men looked disappointed but not surprised. "We respect that," Henry Cobb said. "Just wanted you to know you have options." As they turned to leave, Father Amos lingered. He lowered his voice. "There is a third option." Eliza frowned. "What kind of option?" "You could stay," he said, "but not here on the edge. The town is growing. It needs teachers, people who understand both worlds, people who can bridge what's been divided." Eliza stared at him. "You're offering me a teaching post." "The committee is," he said with a small smile. "Your daughter would attend the new school, and your husband, Elias Turner, can no longer run the livery alone. They need a man who knows horses." The possibility struck her silent. Not hiding, not fleeing. A life rooted where they had already fought their hardest battles. "I'll discuss it with Sahko," she said at last. The men soon rode back toward town, promising to respect whatever choice they made. When the dust finally settled, Eliza turned to find Sahko watching her, his expression unreadable. "You're considering it," he said quietly. It was not truly a question. Eliza understood that the moment she saw it, in Sahko's eyes, the possibility of staying, of building something lasting, instead of forever running. June Ward, who had been listening quietly, spoke before either of them could answer. "I like it here," she said with certainty. "This is our home." Sahko knelt in front of her, his large hands resting gently on her shoulders. "Even if some people are cruel, because of who we are," June lifted her chin, fierce in her small resolve, "then we teach them to be better, like you taught me to track, like Mama taught me to read." A smile broke across Sahko's face, softening features once carved by hardship. He looked up at Eliza, a silent question between them. "It won't be easy," Eliza said carefully. "There will always be those who hate us simply for existing." "When has our road ever been easy?" Sahko replied. "But maybe this is where we belong, not hiding, but standing. Showing another way is possible." Eliza looked from Sahko to June, her whole world contained in those two faces. Then her gaze drifted to the land itself, the cabin they had raised together, the garden pushing stubborn green through the soil, the stream that had first carried Sahko into their lives. "We stay," she said at last. "This is our home. We earned it." Sahko rose and drew her into his arms. His embrace carried gratitude, devotion, and a quiet vow for the years ahead. June wrapped herself around them, both completing the circle. Together they turned back toward the cabin, no longer just a shelter, but a signal. A small, steady light in a world that badly needed one. 5 years passed. Each season brought hardship and grace in equal measure. Willow Creek grew slowly, and with it grew a cautious acceptance of the family once whispered about in anger. Eliza taught at the schoolhouse, her classroom becoming a place where settler children and native children learned not only letters and numbers, but respect. Sahko worked at the livery, his calm authority, an unmatched understanding of horses earning trust. In time, he became a partner in the business. June, now 10, thrived. She moved easily between English and Apache, between the ways of her mother and the teachings of Sahko. Other children like her began to appear, children standing between worlds, unsure where they belonged. In Eliza and Sahko's home they found welcome. There were still hard days, side glances, low voices, old resentments clinging like dust. But for every door closed, another opened. One summer evening, as the sun burned the desert gold, Eliza stood on the porch, watching Sahko teach a small group of children, white Apache Mexican, how to read signs in the dirt. June moved among them with confidence, translating Sahko's Apache phrases, demonstrating techniques with patient care. "She's becoming a bridge," a voice said beside Eliza. She turned to see Father Amos Cole, now stooped with age, though his eyes remained sharp. "She already is," Eliza replied. He nodded, watching Sahko, once feared, now surrounded by children who admired him. "When I agreed to marry you too," he admitted, "I thought I was only preventing bloodshed. I never imagined I was planting something that would grow into this." Eliza smiled, remembering the frightened woman she once was, the wounded warrior Sahko had been. "Neither did we." As twilight settled, the children drifted home. June ran ahead to light the lamps in their cabin, now larger, stronger, shaped by Sahko's hands. Eliza and Sahko walked together, their steps aligned after years, side by side. "Do you ever regret it?" Eliza asked quietly. "Staying instead of seeking that valley in New Mexico?" Sahko considered before answering. "No. There we might have found peace for ourselves. Here perhaps we helped make peace for others." Eliza leaned into him, gratitude filling her chest. "Filling the mountain man and the stubborn white woman," she said with a soft laugh. "The land knew," Sahko replied. "It always does." Above them, stars emerged one by one, countless lights against the dark. Inside the cabin, June waited among books, tools, and small treasures from both her worlds. When Eliza and Sahko crossed the threshold, June looked up and smiled, her light brighter than any lamp. And that was enough. "I've been thinking," June Ward said, her tone serious, like a child with an important idea. When I grow up, I want to start a school. A special school for children like me, where we learn both ways, the white way and the Apache way. Eliza and Sahko exchanged a quiet glance, their hearts swelling. In their daughter's words, they saw the future they had fought for. A future where barriers could be crossed, where different ways of life could strengthen one another, where love could rise above the lines that society tried to draw. "That's a fine dream, little bird," Sahko said, his voice thick with emotion. "A dream worth living for." As they sat around the table for their evening meal, Eliza's gaze drifted from Sahko to June. These two the center of her world now. Sahko, once a stranger, a man she had feared, now the beating heart of her life. June Ward, the daughter who carried the weight of hope for a future where the past's shadows could be left behind. Outside the desert, wind whispered through the sage and mesquite, carrying with it the ancient voice of the land that had brought them together. Inside, within their little home, surrounded by warmth and love, they had found what so many seek, yet so few truly find a place to belong, hearts to call home. In the heart of the American West, where distrust and hatred had once seemed as unmovable as the mountains themselves, they had created something simple yet revolutionary: a family. And in doing so, they had sown seeds of change, seeds that would continue to grow long after their story became legend. As Eliza Ward and Sahko's story nears its end, I want to share what lies at the heart of these tales. Through stories like theirs, I hope to show the transformative power of love, a force strong enough to overcome the boundaries society tries to force upon us. Their journey reflects my belief that love has the power to overcome prejudice, fear, and hatred. In telling the stories of the American West, I aim to highlight how equality and respect can take root, even in the toughest of circumstances. Eliza and Sahko's bond represents more than a personal triumph. It's a seed of change planted in a world once ruled by ignorance. It proves that understanding can grow where once there was nothing but hate. These stories are meant to do more than entertain. They are meant to inspire, showing what real love can achieve. When Sahko stands to protect his new family, when Eliza dares to follow her heart despite society's rules, when young June Ward dreams of bridging the gaps between worlds, these moments represent the courage I hope to inspire in all of us. Storytelling has the power to change hearts and minds. Through characters who face impossible odds with grace and resolve, I want to show that our differences don't have to divide us. They can enrich our shared humanity. This story of an unlikely family carving out their place in a changing West is a reminder of what love can do, not only in fiction, but in our own lives. Like the spirit buffalo that appeared miraculously to protect Sahko and Eliza, may we all find unexpected allies in our fight for justice and acceptance. It is my deepest hope that long after the last page is turned, the spirit of this story lingers with you. A reminder that by loving without fear and standing up for equality, we write new chapters, not just in our own lives, but in the greater story of human connection. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Eliza and Sahko's unforgettable story. Your presence and support mean everything to us. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to our channel, leave a like, share it with your friends, and comment with your favorite moment. From the bottom of our hearts, your support keeps us inspired to bring you more tales of love, redemption, and breathtaking twists. At the end of this video, another story from our channel will appear. Click to be amazed by more unforgettable emotional journeys like this one. All stories are created for entertainment purposes and may include fictional elements or dramatized interpretations inspired by historical settings. We use AI tools, voiceover, visuals, scripts as creative assistants. However, all content is reviewed, refined, and edited by humans to ensure emotional authenticity and storytelling quality. We fully comply with YouTube's policies regarding AI-generated content and do not use any deepfake techniques or misleading recreations of real individuals. All visuals and supporting materials are properly licensed. Sharing, re-uploading, modifying, or distributing any part of this content in any form requires written permission. We appreciate your support and respect for original creative work